Hey, welcome to the Booze Barons Facebook sort of ghetto how-to videos. These are just a little thing that I want to put out there for you all. Kind of like a how to drink, essentially, yeah? I thought I'd start off with probably the most, how do you describe it? The spirit that's got the most wank and bullshit behind it, really, when it comes down to it. Scotch. Who'd have thought? Here we have an example of an Australian blended Scotch whiskey. So they import all the Scotch from barrels, filter it, blend it, and then shove it in a bottle. Call it the Naked Scot. Here we have a fairly standard American market released J&B Rare Scotch whiskey. Whiskies designed for the American market were designed to be drunk a specific kind of way, so we'll get onto that later. And then just a really nice standard single malt from Arbelauer. They're a 10-year-old release. Rightio, so let's get to it. Scotch. It became really big, sort of mid-19th century, a little bit earlier really if you're talking about it with the American market. Blended whiskey came about a fair while before that. It was all to do with consistency. The single malt producers weren't being super consistent, so it took tea merchants and people like that, like Johnny Walker, a tea merchant, to blend the whiskies together to create something standard, regular, that they could sell time and time again and people would keep coming back for. As whiskies were developed for specific markets, they were developed to be drunk particular ways, and this is really important with whiskey. This, the Naked Scot, is a very modern release, so we'll attack that last. That'll be the last one that we deal with. Let's go for the original style, the single malt. Single malt whiskey is incredibly diverse. There's more flavor components to a single malt whiskey than there is in the most complex wine in the world. It's just that simple. These are far more diverse and far more complex than your average wine. To get the most out of it, there are a couple of things that have to be taken into consideration. People usually say temperature, what you add to it, all that sort of stuff, and it's all totally true. But when it boils down to it, it's just about how you go about drinking it. There we go, I'm not going to give myself a tiny little taster. Right. Now, forget all the wine appreciation stuff. We're not going to nose the glass and talk about that. You get enough of that on the side. How to actually drink and enjoy this? I always do it. Glencairn glass, gives enough aromatic flavors that you can actually kind of get that whole kind of sense, the smell, all the rest of it while you're drinking. And, that's just a nailed single malt Scotch. The guys at Arbelauer have been putting out this sort of thing for such a long time. It's no wonder they do it so bloody well. But here comes the mysticism, adding water to it. So many people are like, don't put water with whiskey, don't put ice with whiskey, all that kind of stuff. Ice is there to chill the whiskey down. If you're chilling it down, you're forcing the little ethyl esters, the flavor compounds, all that aroma and really cool stuff, it forces it to kind of tighten up and stay in the alcohol so you can't really taste it. Water, on the other hand, even water that's been chilled or filtered or anything like that, is really, really phenomenal. There are two things that happen. First, as you add just a tiny bit, a couple of drops, little drizzle, whatever, little tiny piping them out. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it actually develops ropiness in there, and that's the hydrogen hitting the alcohol, the hydrocarbon structure, because as a whiskey or any alcohol sits and relaxes, which is the process that it goes through whilst it's aging in a barrel, whilst it's waiting to go into a barrel, all that sort of stuff, as it sits and waits, it clusters. And as the alcohol kind of forms these clusters, they actually bond around a lot of the ethyl esters, which is, like I said before, the flavor compounds, where it all really comes from. So a tiny bit of water, just even 1 or 2 drops, will burst that open and allow the ethyl esters to just kind of get all excited and in there in the glass so you can really smell. And already the flavor changes, and depending on how it was fermented and what sort of ethyl esters have gone into it and how it was aged, you just get so much more flavor from it, just from a tiny amount. You haven't changed the alcohol volume with just a couple of drops, right? Not to a noticeable effect. And that's what the few drops of water is all about. Now, as you saw, I poured in a little bit more than a few drops, so I've already done the second step. The second step is adding enough water to bring it to a comfortable drinking level. Some people don't like the burn of alcohol, so you add a little bit more water to just make it that little bit easier to drink. It's not going to change the flavor profile as drastically as those first few drops. And that, essentially, is single malt whiskey. Done. Easy. Rightio. Now, we move from single malt on to where it then went, the blended whiskies. Now, blended whiskies, like I said, were for consistency. They're originally meant to be drunk the same as normal whiskies, and then it became popular to drink them with stuff. America. Enter the American market. J&B Rare is a perfect example because it was made for the American market, and so many scotches were blended for the American market in mind. I'm going to show you how blended scotch was originally drunk in America. Forget scotch on the rocks, this is the idea. There you go, tall glass, not something small, not a tumbler, none of this Glen can fancy shit, just packed full of ice. Get your whiskey in there. And top it with a whole lot of soda, seltzer, all that stuff. These Americans loved their soda water. And that's kind of how it was meant to be drunk. A tall, cool, refreshing drink. This is why when you have a scotch and soda, it's refreshing, you get a little bit of flavour, there's enough kind of like astringent sort of peaty flavour that you know that it's scotch and it tastes different from any other whiskey with soda. And that is exactly how it was meant to be had. Chilled and drowned in soda. So when you have this and you taste it straight compared to a single malt and say, well, it tastes like shit, it's going to. It's not meant to be drunk that way. And I'm not saying that it's the perfect way to drink it. I'm just saying that it was intended to be drunk a particular way. And this is kind of it, which is sort of cool when you think about it. People made an entire product, a whole bunch of them, to be drunk a particular way because that's how people liked it. It wasn't until about 1952 that on the rocks became a thing. It didn't exist. People weren't drinking it on ice. They're drinking it drowned in soda. To be honest, that's just a really nice adult soda, basically. It's really good. So, that's what you got. Traditional blended whiskies and what they're trying to do. Then, move on to the modern guys. Here we go, Naked Scott. Like I said, it's an Australian company doing it, which is... how kosher is that? Bottled and filtered in Australia, but technically still scotch? We'll let it go. But this is different. Why? Because it's been filtered. It's been filtered a lot. You can get it when you smell it. It's a lot sweeter, a lot lighter, way more caramel flavours, way more oak flavours. So what are they trying to do? Well, that's kind of obvious. What is the most drunk drink anywhere in the world after water? Starts with a C. Has another word that also starts with a C. It's the only reason why Atlanta even freaking exists. That's right, it's cola. That's right. So, cola. How does it taste with your blended modern whiskey? Well, there it is. Sorry, I had to keep the bottle because we don't really use Coca-Cola. Just keep that quiet. But the idea of it is that you're pairing some of the major flavor profiles in a cola drink with what's in the whiskey. So, orange oil, lavender oil, big components of Coca-Cola. They pair in really nicely with oak and with caramel. Caramel's already in the Coke as well, so like you drink that, it's almost like drinking Coke, but it's a little bit alcoholic, you feel a little bit more adult, and that's really it. It's meant to be almost hidden, but you can just tell that it's Scotch and not bourbon or anything else because it's not quite as sweet. There's still that little bit of peaty astringentness, which is quite nice and pleasing and a little bit more adult. But that is what all these modern blended Scotches are meant to be drunk by. Like, because they realise people are drinking more Coke. They're drinking everything with Coke, so you may as well make the damn thing to be drunk with Coke, right? Jack Daniels did really well with this with their Tennessee whiskey. It pretty much tastes like it's meant to be put in Coke, and then when you put it in Coke, it tastes like the Coke's a little bit better, and that's really it. That's how Jack Daniels became really huge, by making a drink designed for Coca-Cola. It's really simple. There's nothing bad about it. It's just how things sort of are. So remember, look at the scotches that people have. You can't really with us because we bag it all up for some. You come in, ask me about it, I'll tell you. But go see what they've got. If they're talking Johnny Walker, it's easy. Soda or Coke. If they've got J&B Rare, soda. If they've got single malt, drink it straight or with a tiny bit of water. Fuck the ice. Don't listen to anyone that says, no more than 2 cubes of water. That's it. Don't put ice in it. You are killing the flavour. Don't stress about adding Coke or soda to a blended whiskey. Even if it's a ridiculous blended whiskey. The best blended whiskies, and I mean the best blended whiskies, are trying their hardest to taste like a good single malt. And a good single malt is a hell of a lot cheaper than the best blended whiskies. Difference is, an average or good blended whiskey is a hell of a lot cheaper than an average or good single malt. So that's kind of where you're playing at. Don't buy premium blended whiskies, guys. It's really not worth it. But there you go. That's it. Whiskey, well, Scotch at least, in a nutshell. Talk to you soon.